Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to start part 5 of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Alchemy by Dennis William Hauck. Part 5, Spiritual Alchemy. Changing lead into gold was only a metaphor for a larger process that involved the rejuvenation of the body, the integration of the personality, and the perfection of the human soul. Though they spoke of retorts, furnaces, acids, and chemicals, the alchemists were really talking about changes taking place in their own bodies, minds, and spirits. One of the central ideas in alchemy is that no transformation is complete and lasting unless it occurs simultaneously on all levels of reality: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. This distinction is what makes alchemy a unique discipline that combines the methods of science, psychology, and religion. On the spiritual level, alchemy seeks to unite the opposing essences of soul and spirit in an operation known as the sacred marriage. The product of this union is the philosopher's stone, which in spiritual alchemy is the embodiment of a permanent state of perfected consciousness. Chapter 18, Mental Alchemy. In this chapter, turning to salt, the first matter within us, the 4 elements in people, planetary forces in the personality, the father of modern alchemy, and the 3 phases of mental alchemy. Mental alchemy is the use of alchemical techniques and operations on the psychological level in an attempt to perfect one's character and personality. This is different from spiritual alchemy in that mental alchemy focuses on the existing aspects of the personality and deals with psychological forces in personal transformation. Spiritual alchemy, on the other hand, deals with the universal forces of soul and spirit as they are expressed in individuals. To alchemists, the mental or psychological work took place primarily in the material realm in the salt of the personality. In the work of personal transformation, the psychological operations are usually completed during the conjunction, while the spiritual operations don't culminate until the final coagulation, which is the fixation of spirit in a new body or incarnation. Interest in mental alchemy began in the 18th century as people realized that the operations and matter of alchemy could be interpreted in psychological terms. At the time, there was great interest in curing mental illness and alleviating the day-to-day phobias and neuroses that dominated people's lives. The salted personality. The basic problem in personal alchemy is that on the spiritual and mental levels, many individuals become more rigid and less alive as they grow older. For example, many people stubbornly cling to set judgments and outmoded beliefs that limit their range of experience in the world. In the alchemist's view, we all gradually turn to salt as we mature. In alchemy, salt is the principle of the crystallization of energy into set structures. To retrieve that energy, the original salt, our personality, must be dissolved and purified so that it better reflects the essence of who we really are. In other words, as we pass through the trials and tribulations of existence, we form judgments and beliefs that limit or structure our experience. We compromise ourselves and our integrity to conform to the dictates of society, and we end up carrying psychological baggage composed of rejected and suppressed feelings, emotions, thoughts, and desires. Of course, this natural process of adulteration is no fault of our own. It is just how we learn to survive in the world and fit into human society. However, it is also where the work of mental transformation must begin. Tread carefully. In alchemy and psychology, suppressed or rejected material is called the shadow, in Latin, umbra. This material often retains some of its life force and can become a threat to successful transformation. It's like a hidden contaminating energy that develops in the work. On the personal level, we develop a shadow personality in which the rejected material still lives on in the darkness of our subconscious minds. That subconscious material has a mind of its own and is the source of many psychological problems when it conflicts with our conscious goals and preferred behavior. The first matter in people. Psychologically, the first matter is identical with the dark, irrational forces of the subconscious mind. Like the first matter of the universe, the first matter within us contains all the potential energy and dynamic oppositions necessary to fuel our transformation and achieve the goal of the great work. In the mental work, the first matter to be transformed is the shadowy and chaotic subconscious mind. It is located in the vessel of the human mind, and that is where the work begins. However, the awakened subconscious is a surprisingly powerful force that can generate all kinds of negative energies in the personality. That's why the work of mental alchemy must take place in the hermetically sealed vessel of the mind in the inner laboratory. The energies must be contained and worked on without contaminating the personality or interfering with its function in the world. In analytical psychology, the sealed vessel symbolizes the cooperative efforts and confidentiality between the patient and the therapist. Sealing the vessel confines all the potentially dangerous psychic matter inside, but as heat from the fires of intense introspection increases, the pressure inside the psychic vessel builds. Jungian therapist Louis von France described this process. It is the torture of fire, intensifying the psychological process. One is roasted in what one is. For you roast in what you are yourself and not in anything else. One could say that one is cooked in one's own juice. Just as in the laboratory work, with too much liquid at this stage, the matter tends to putrefy. In mental alchemy, liquid is symbolic of emotions and feelings. So the idea here is to divorce oneself from the intense emotions associated with the contents of the psyche and work more with fire, which is symbolic of the light of objective consciousness. This internal heating results in an evaporative process in which the emotional energy is slowly driven off. This also removes the original impurities, leaving behind a purer solution of self with which to work. This is the general principle behind working with the chaotic and often threatening energies of the first matter of the subconscious in mental alchemy. This process of recognizing and isolating the first matter is the first step in alchemy, and the work proceeds through the 3 phases of alchemy with which you are already familiar. See chapters 11 through 13. The 4 elements in people. In mental alchemy, the structure of one's personality is based on the 4 elements and originates from the creation of ego out of the chaos of the subconscious, just as the fourfold structure of the universe was created by the action of the 4 elements emerging from the first matter. As you know from chapter 7, the 4 elements were believed to be present in the form of humors that made up a person's temperament or personality. The fire element was expressed in the choleric humor, the water element in the melancholic humor, the air element in the sanguine humor, and the earth element in the phlegmatic humor. The 4 elements in people are also expressed as positive characteristics or virtues, and negative characteristics or vices. For example, the virtues of fire are courage, daring, and enthusiasm, while the vices of fire are anger, jealousy, and vindictiveness. The virtues of water are compassion, love, and creativity, and the vices of water are instability and spinelessness. The virtues of air are diligence, dexterity, and optimism. The vices of air are frivolity, boasting, and squandering. The virtues of earth are endurance, strength, and patience, but the vices of earth are laziness, dullness, and boredom. Psychologist Carl Jung saw the 4 elements as archetypes existing in the collective subconscious and thus present in everyone. He called them functions. The fire element is expressed in the function of intuition. The water element is expressed in the function of feeling. The air element is expressed in the function of thinking, and the earth element is expressed in the function of sensation. Jung considered fire and air the active masculine elements and water and earth the passive feminine elements. In Jungian psychology, the degree of development of each of the four elements in our conscious mind, balanced with the subconscious retention of the remaining elements, determines our personality and attitude. In both psychology and alchemy, the goal is to develop a balance of the elements within the individual. As far back as Empedocles, philosophers noted that those who have near equal proportions of the four elements are more intelligent and have truer perceptions of reality. Success in mental alchemy requires balancing the elements within one's psyche, and the relationships of the elements within us, whether they oppose or complement one another, determine whether we feel basically happy and balanced or develop neuroses, phobias, and other psychological disturbances. Thoth's tips. Sometimes it's easier to relate to the four elements on a personal level. Two books that help you do that are The Four Elements of Change by Heather Ash and Vicki Noble, and The Four Temperaments by Dr. Randy Rolfe. According to Jung, when two opposing elements encounter each other in the personality, there are three possibilities. They may generate psychic energy, they may neutralize each other, and they may combine. In alchemy and psychology, the third case is the most important, for it represents the conjunction of opposites that results in a transcendence of conflicting polarities. The planets in people. According to the principles of mental alchemy, the planetary forces are present in our individual personalities. We reach enlightenment by conquering, understanding, and controlling the archetypal energies each planet represents. In the cauldron of our personality, the sun is what gives us the desire to transform in the first place. In a sense, the sun wants pure spiritual energy and a new, more perfect identity. The moon, on the other hand, wants physicality and experience. Mercury wants to find inspiration and higher love. If we were to personify these planetary powers, we might portray the sun as the creator, the moon as the nurturer, and Mercury as the thinker. These first three planets represent primordial desires that carry the signatures of the noble metals gold, silver, and quicksilver. They also represent the three essentials of sulfur or sun, mercury or mercury, and salt or the moon within us. The outer planets and base metals are unbalanced and unperfected. Venus suffers from too much water and needs focus and intention. Mars suffers from too much fire and needs compassion and understanding. Jupiter suffers from too much spirit and needs grounding and restraint. And Saturn is too materialistic and structured. It needs growth and expansion. If we were to personify these planetary powers, we might characterize Venus as the lover, Mars as the warrior, Jupiter as the philosopher, and Saturn as the teacher. Jung and alchemy. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung has been called the father of modern alchemy for his efforts to revitalize the ancient art and apply it to mental alchemy. Jung began a lifelong study of the subject after he discovered the images and principles of alchemy surfacing in the dreams and compulsions of his patients. Jung eventually accumulated the largest library of original alchemy texts in Europe and spent many years trying to decipher the writings of the alchemists. He came to appreciate alchemy as a dynamic system of inquiry into the nature of the subconscious. Alchemy as a nature philosophy of great consideration in the Middle Ages, he said, throws a bridge to the past and their gnosis, and also to the future, the modern psychology of the unconscious. Jung's interest in alchemy was kindled not only by the thoughts and dreams of his patients, but also by his own personal experiences. Long before he discovered alchemy, Jung had the same repeating dream that held a clue to the structure of the human mind. He dreamt that right next to his house was a huge addition or wing that he had not known about. He was amazed that the strange structure was there all the time and he had not realized it. In his dreams, Jung explored the mysterious addition to his house and finally realized the rooms contained things from his subconscious that he had rejected or locked away there. Then, in 1926, Jung had a dream that opened the door to understanding the strange addition in his inner house and shaped the focus of his studies for the rest of his life. He had been intensely searching for a framework for his work with the subconscious, but could find no modern discipline, including the psychology of the time, that was powerful enough to encompass the subject. In this unusually powerful dream, he was being held captive in time in the 17th century. Later, I understood that this dream was referring to alchemy, he wrote. For in the 17th century, alchemy reached its climax. Jung felt the dream was telling him that the subconscious would reveal itself by an in-depth study of medieval alchemy. Jung's exhaustive studies revealed that the operations of alchemy were at work in the human mind. It was an astonishing discovery that confirmed the alchemist's teaching that the principles of alchemy were universal and took place on all levels of reality. As depicted in the following figure, the operations of alchemy are like a stairway leading to the perfection of the inner person. The blindfolded person in the lower right corner has not yet discovered the path of alchemy, while the person to his left is trying to tell him that there is life in the dark caves of the mountain. This hidden life is the subconscious mind, and its contents are symbolized by rabbits who live underground. Jung saw that the first matter in people is the subconscious mind, and that it is the subject of transformation in mental alchemy. According to Jung, the philosopher's stone in mental alchemy is the perfection of the personality. This natural alchemical process is the gradual transformation from a false, fragmented, and distorted personality into a whole or integrated personality in which psychic elements and energies are balanced. From The Alchemist. Carl Jung was a true alchemist who introduced alchemy to the modern world. Only by discovering alchemy, he said, have I clearly understood that the unconscious is a process and that ego's rapports with it and its contents initiate an evolution, more precisely, a real metamorphosis of the mind. The black phase of mental alchemy. As in other kinds of alchemy, the blackening is the first sign that the process of mental alchemy is beginning. The Saturn signatures of depression and melancholia arouse suspicions that all is not right and cause us to slow down and examine our inner life. The blackening is always seen as the death of the first matter, or the removal of life and energy from it. In psychology, it is the death of old habits, attitudes, relationships, unhealthy attachments and dependencies, and the withdrawal of psychological projections in which we blame others for our own predicament. Primary among these factions taking shape within the first matter is the shadow, which is the inferior part of the personality that lives in the darkness. Think of the shadow as those mental elements that are incompatible with the chosen conscious attitude. In mental alchemy, these rejected elements coalesce into a splinter personality, which is a concentration of subconscious energy that the alchemists liken to a threatening dragon. To defeat that dragon and keep it from taking control of your life, the shadow and dark aspects of yourself must be brought to light, confronted, and assimilated into consciousness. All the unpleasant feelings of guilt and worthlessness must be suffered through in this alchemical process of mortification. Both in the lab and in the mental work, this is a dangerous period during which poisonous vapors are released and vessels explode due to overheating. On the psychological level, the operations of calcination and dissolution are necessary to differentiate one's ego from the shadow and to reinvent oneself on a higher level that psychologists call the self. Carl Jung clarified how the mental work proceeded for medieval alchemists. The profound darkness that shrouds the alchemical procedure comes from the fact that although the alchemist was interested in the chemical part of the work, he also used it to devise a nomenclature for the psychic transformation that really fascinated him. Although the alchemists lacked the modern psychiatric system of classification to describe this inner transformation, They invented their own unique terminology that applied to all levels of their work. The white phase of mental alchemy. At the moment of the death of the shadow and the splintered personality during the black phase of mental alchemy, the white phase begins to unfold. A person rises up from depression and reports feeling suddenly relieved, refreshed, and optimistic. It is the daybreak of the new personality, free of its gross and rejected parts. Psychic energy is no longer shared between the inner forces of light and darkness, and is now becoming fully available to the resurrected self. The matter has suffered through the black phase and starts coming back to life. This moment is highly rewarding in both the practical laboratory work and in the work in the inner lab. The focus of the white phase in mental alchemy is a washing or purification of psychic contents separated out from the black phase. This takes place entirely in the twilight of daybreak, in a mix of rational thoughts and irrational feelings in one's own mind, or in free-flowing conversation in the office of a therapist. There is no more reason to hide your dirty linen, because you have freed it of its contaminating guilt. During this separation process, the opposing forces and essences of the psyche are clearly discerned. If the opposing essences remain separated and generate new energy, the energy will be used up in some sort of creative endeavor, such as an artist giving his inspiration a new form. If these essences simply merge and neutralize each other, no new energy is produced, and the merging is considered an alchemical stillbirth. If, however, the opposing essences unite in a fertile marriage of opposites, then a new element is born that incorporates the essences of both. This is the alchemical conjunction, the transcendence of conflicting polarities in the creation of a higher form known as the philosopher's child. This is the product of the operation of conjunction, and if it survives, it grows into the perfected philosopher's stone. Thoth's tips. The overall plot of the Harry Potter books by J.K. Rowling is a three-part drama that follows the three phases of alchemy. The long black phase culminates in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, in which everything Harry attempts goes wrong, ending in the death of Sirius Black, his beloved godfather. The white phase takes place in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, which centers on the death of Albus Dumbledore. Albus is Latin for white. The final red stage culminates in the final book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, in which Harry's friend Rubeus Hagrid is forced to take part in a death march to celebrate the slaying of Harry. Rubeus is Latin for red. At the end of the series, as at the end of the great work, conflict is resolved and the subject of the work is perfected. The red phase of mental alchemy. If the white phase concludes in a successful conjunction of opposites, then the red phase of alchemy begins. This is the true sunrise of the mental work, when all forces and elements have been assimilated into conscious awareness. If, however, there are unassimilated subconscious elements, or the ego raises its ugly head as pride, then the matter is still contaminated and cannot proceed without further purification. This often happens both in the lab and in the mental work, and initiates a period of putrefaction similar to the black phase. The length and intensity of the putrefaction depends on the degree of contamination. If the putrefaction of all remaining traces of impurities is successful, then the life-giving operation of fermentation begins. In mental alchemy, fermentation is the introduction of spiritual forces into the personality, which gives us a sense of purpose and new energy for life. A process of mental distillation begins as we try to assimilate the spiritual forces from above and unite them with the forces of personality from below. This is sometimes called the vertical work, and it is exemplified by the circulation of light meditation we discussed in Chapter 13. As the red phase of alchemy proceeds, the process of coagulation begins naturally. Once the level of purification in distillation reaches a certain stage, the red stone will form all by itself. The true key to the stone and the last operation over which the alchemist has any control is distillation. The process of distillation, whether in the lab or in the mind, is really a process of gradual multiplication of powers, an amplification of energy that eventually condenses into a completely new material. The least you need to know. Mental alchemy is the use of alchemical techniques to perfect the personality. The first matter in people is the chaotic and powerful subconscious mind. Each of the four elements is expressed in mental functions common to all people. The planetary forces in people are archetypal energies that determine our temperament and personality. Carl Jung is considered the father of modern alchemy. The black, white, and red phases take place on the psychological level of transformation, as well as in the alchemist's laboratory. Chapter 19, Alchemy of the Soul. In this chapter, Taming the Dragons of Alchemy, The Light of True Imagination, Kinds of Alchemical Meditation, Secrets of the Azoth Drawing. Spiritual alchemy, which focuses on the perfection of the soul, began in ancient Egypt with efforts to connect the pharaohs with their divine nature, and later developed into the Hermetic teachings that evolved into alchemy. Spiritual alchemy seeks to transform and perfect the immortal essence that is in all of us. Most alchemists would argue that alchemy has always been a spiritual discipline that delved into metallurgy and chemistry, only to find in nature a universal pattern of transformation that could be applied to the spiritual work. Just as alchemists try to awaken the metals to their true nature in gold, so do spiritual alchemists try to awaken the soul and body to their spiritual nature. In spiritual alchemy, the transformation of lead into gold is analogous to spiritual progress. The base metals have yet to mature into the incorruptible perfection of gold, just as the common person has not yet achieved her full ripeness of spiritual embodiment. So the great work, which is the creation of the philosopher's stone, is not simply about turning lead into gold, nor is it about the production of the elixir of life to gain immortality. The philosopher's stone represents a level of achievement, a touchstone of proof indicating the alchemist has already succeeded in the inner work of spiritual transformation. The dragons of spiritual alchemy. No symbol in alchemy captures the energies encountered in spiritual work better than that of the dragon. Alchemists both East and West believed in dragons, if not in the real sense, then certainly as an archetypal energy embedded in the very fabric of the universe. In fact, if we do not understand the nature of the dragon, much of the advanced alchemical wisdom will be beyond our grasp. So the first step in spiritual alchemy is to seek out the dragon. Where do we find a dragon? Anywhere. The dragon is in everything. Its scales are in the bark of trees, its claws gouged out the great canyons. The dragon's roar is heard in the thunder, and its forked tongue is the lightning. The dragon is a composite of the features of many animals and represents the chaotic matrix of nature of which our lives are part. Dragons derive their power from the primordial first matter from which all things spring. Unleashing the dragon into the world is one of the primary goals of alchemists. To alchemists, the dragon represents boundless, unstructured energy and the primordial life force. An old alchemical saying advises, "Apponere draconum es prehendere vitam." Pardon my pronunciation. That means to face the dragon is to seize life. Facing the dragon occurs during the black phase of alchemy. Accepting the dragon as part of our lives is difficult for most people. The dragon is the underlying chaos in our lives, our culture, and our bodies that is part of the unknown, part of the dark side of the universe. Spiritual leaders from prehistoric shamans to Buddha and Christ all began their spiritual journey by realizing how much chaos and suffering are in the world. Once you muster the courage to face the dragon, You can do nothing but accept it. Surrendering to the dragon begins during the white phase of alchemy. During this stage of purification, you must acknowledge both the chaotic powers in the world and also the chaos within yourself. Part of this purification is the realization that the dragon is never all good or all bad. You have to suspend judgment to accept the powers of nature and realize that the universe is not just about you and your comfort. A greater pattern exists, and the energy of the dragon is what fulfills it. The last step in dealing with dragons is the most dangerous. It is the act of unleashing the dragon, which marks the red phase of alchemy. In alchemy, the dragon destroys any structure or salt, any gross elements that exist in a person's spirit. If you are free of falsity, devoid of ego, and pure of spirit, there is a chance the dragon will not devour you. Oddly, the real trick to unleashing the dragon is not to confront it, but to disappear before it notices you. Be still, the alchemists advised. Rest in the arms of the dragon. In spiritual alchemy, if you can quietly merge with the primal energies of the universe, the dragon's powers will follow the light of your own mind. The true imagination. In Hermetic philosophy, the light of mind directs the transformation of energy into matter. The same principle of divine light manifesting the whole universe from the chaos of the first matter works in each one of us. This principle is the source of the alchemist's fascination with what Paracelsus called the true imagination. The true imagination of the alchemist should not be confused with daydreaming or fantasy. In his writings, Carl Jung referred to it by the Latin imaginatio, to differentiate it from the common concepts of imagination. True imagination actually envisions the subtle processes of nature and connects with the divine archetypes. It is the concentrated awareness of real imagining. From The Alchemist. The concept of imaginatio, said Carl Jung, is the most important key to understand the opus. Jung believed that the true imagination of the alchemists had nothing to do with fantasy, memories, or dreams. As hard as it was for him to risk his reputation as a psychologist, Jung admitted that the true imagination connects with something real that exists on a more subtle level than our everyday lives. He described this subtle level as an intermediate realm between mind and matter, in which subtle bodies, called psychoid elements, manifest themselves in a mental as well as a material form. According to Paracelsus, the true imagination leads life thus deciphered back to its spiritual reality, and it then takes the name of meditation. What he meant was that the true imagination envisions the divine source of everything, and the primary way to access it is in meditation. This hidden reality is always present, but the eyes of ordinary men do not see it. Only the mind's eye of the purified intellect and the force of the true imagination can perceive the true vision of which the alchemist spoke. The true imagination attempts to capture the essence of things as God dreams them. Therefore, when Hermetic writers speak of seeing with the eyes of spirit, they are describing a process that penetrates into the mystery of things beyond their outward appearance. Alchemical meditation. Most often, the methods recommended by alchemists for entering the true imagination consisted of prolonged and silent invocation of divine powers. Sometimes a person's inner angel or good angel was invoked. In their meditations, the alchemists were seeking to find the angelic ray that unites the world of forms with the divine ideals that are the source of everything. In the Hermetic view, the creation of the universe took place through meditation, the focusing of the light of the mind of God. All things have come from this one thing, says the Emerald Tablet, through the meditation of one mind. The source of the one mind is the same for everyone and can be found in meditation. Meditation was very important to the alchemists and was even part of their practical laboratory work. However, during the heyday of alchemy in the Middle Ages, the concept of meditation was a dangerous idea to talk about. Just saying that people could make contact with the divine through private meditation and prayer was enough for the church to burn a person at the stake. In general, the meditations of alchemists are marked by 3 magisteriums or accomplishments. These 3 accomplishments made Hermes thrice greatest and correspond to the 3 levels of reality: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. Lunar meditations work on the physical and bodily level. Solar meditations work on the mental and psychological level, and stellar or cosmic meditations work on the level of spirit and the divine or cosmic powers. Lunar meditation is cultivating the stillness and the darkness within to discover the deeper essence we all possess. It is an introverted journey to the underworld of matter and body to seek out the spark of light trapped there that is our essence. During lunar meditations, we plumb the depths of soul in a deeply relaxed state that seeks connection with subconscious or dormant powers. Solar meditation is a more extroverted journey into the realm of light and consciousness. During solar meditation, we attempt to break the shackles of ego and culture controls to seek higher consciousness. By exposing the self-deception in our thoughts and using mantras and other meditation gimmicks to lull our everyday ego mind into submission, we purify and increase our personal consciousness. Stellar meditation requires the merging of lunar and solar consciousness in the most powerful of all the alchemist's tools. By retrieving the sparks of light trapped in our bodies and uniting them with the light of consciousness, freed from egotistical control, we create a brilliant beacon to the universe. Tread carefully. Don't confuse alchemical meditation with other meditative or relaxation techniques. Alchemical meditations are about harnessing spiritual forces for transformation and manifestation. Alchemical meditation is also different from other forms of meditation because it is an active instead of passive activity. Alchemical meditation seeks to actually work with the transcendental powers, and the object is not always just to relax the mind. Through stellar meditation, we attempt to connect with the source of all spiritual power, the one mind of the universe. This state requires a truly free and purified consciousness, free of psychological, genetic, and social restraints to our being. A higher presence that becomes our true guide in alchemical transformation fills the void created by this death of our worldly connections. And it is at this level of mind that Thoth or Hermes is said to speak to us directly. The Azoth of the philosophers. As an example of one of the many meditative emblems used by alchemists in their spiritual work, let's look at a drawing known as the Azoth of the philosophers, which the legendary German alchemist Basil Valentine published in 1659. The word Azoth is another name for the first matter. The A and Z in the word convey the idea of something complete and all-encompassing, everything from A to Z. The diagram shown in the following figure is arranged like a mandala, a geometric circular emblem used to focus meditation. And at its center lies the face of a bearded alchemist at the beginning of the work. Looking into a mirror, this is where the adept fixes his attention to begin meditation. The downward pointing triangle superimposed over the face of the alchemist represents water in the sense of divine grace pouring down from heaven. The schematic body of the alchemist is shown in perfect balance with the 4 elements as depicted by his arms and legs. His right foot is firmly planted on earth and his left is in water. In his right hand is a torch of fire, and in his left hand an ostrich feather symbolizing air. The alchemist also stands balanced between the masculine and feminine powers in the background. Sol, the archetypal sun king, is seated on a lion to his right. Luna, the archetypal moon queen, is seated on a great fish in the ocean to his left. Sol holds a scepter and a shield. indicating his authority and strength over the visible world. But the fiery dragon of the rejected contents of his subconscious waits patiently in a cave beneath him. Luna holds the reins to a great fish, symbolizing her control of the forces of nature, and behind her is a chaff of wheat, which stands for her connection to fertility and growth. The bow and arrow she cradles in her left arm symbolize the wounds of the heart and body she accepts as part of her existence. Between the legs of the alchemist is a smaller triangle labeled corpus, meaning body. The 5 stars surrounding it indicate that the body also contains the hidden 5th element, the invisible quintessence or life force. Where the head of the alchemist should be, there is a strange winged caricature. This represents the ascended essence, the essence of the soul raised to the highest level in the body. Touching the wings of the ascended essence are a salamander engulfed in flames on the left side of the drawing and a standard bird on the right. Below the salamander is the inscription anima or soul. Below the bird is the inscription spiritus or spirit. The 3 essentials of spiritus, anima, and corpus or spirit, soul, and body form a large inverted triangle that stands behind the central emblem of the alchemist. Together, they symbolize the archetypal energies the alchemist terms sulfur, mercury, and salt. The 7 rays placed in a circular pattern around the body of the alchemist indicate the progressive level of transformation. Numbered from 1 to 7, these contain the cipher of the corresponding planet and metal. Next to each ray is a circle containing a scene, which elaborates on the meaning of the operations performed at that stage. The ray of Saturn. Looking at the figure, you can see that the first ray in the azoth is the black ray labeled number 1. Representing the beginning of the ladder of the planets, it is marked by the cipher that stands for both the metal lead and the planet Saturn, which is the archetypal situation at the beginning of the work. The square symbol for salt, also shown in the first ray, indicates the work begins in the unredeemed or imperfect matter. The first circle between rays 1 and 2 shows a black crow perching on top of a skull. Next to it is the Latin word visita, which means to visit or start a journey. Black crows are symbols of the initial black phase of alchemy, during which the subject of transformation is purified by breaking it down during mortification and calcination. The ray of Jupiter. The second ray is marked with the symbol that stands for both the metal tin and the planet Jupiter, and the corresponding second circle depicts the black crow watching itself being dissolved. The word on the outer ring near the circle contains the word interiora, referring to the interior or innermost parts. The operation at this stage is a further process of mortification known as dissolution. From the Alchemist. Meditating on the azoth drawing could get you in a lot of trouble in the Middle Ages. It was decreed that all attempts to reach the divine, including prayer and meditation, had to be done through the church. Furthermore, the downward pointing triangle that covers the alchemist's face at the center of the dragon represents divine energy raining down from heaven. This implies that the face of God and the face of the alchemist are the same. Such blasphemous ideas explain why this drawing was circulated secretly among alchemists for many decades before being published. The ray of Mars. The cipher signifying both the metal iron and the planet Mars marks the third ray of the azoth, which is also marked with a smaller symbol denoting sulfur, one of the 3 essentials of alchemy. Iron and sulfur come together chemically in vitriol or sulfuric acid, the aggressive liquid fire of the alchemists. The third circle depicts the alchemical operation of separation. The black, earthbound crow splits into 2 white birds that retrieve the saved remains from the earlier operations. This is the first coming together of soul and spirit and represents the beginning of the white phase of purification. In the ring above this circle is written Terra, meaning of the earth, and referring to the real essences being separated out from the dregs of matter at this stage. The ray of the sun. In the fourth ray, the cipher stands for both gold and the sun. The fourth circle depicts the twin birds of soul and spirit leaving the earth together, lifting a five-spiked crown which represents the fifth element or quintessence recovered from the preceding operations. At this point in the work, the operation of conjunction begins, which recombines the saved essences of soul and spirit into a new living incarnation. In the ring above the fourth circle is inscribed the word rectificando, which means setting things right. This is the turning point in alchemy when the matter begins the process of spiritualization. The ray of Venus. The Aethos fifth ray is marked with the cipher that stands for both copper and Venus. The fifth circle is under the inscription En Venise, you will discover. In this operation of fermentation, the essences of soul and spirit come together into a new life, which is the beginning of the red phase of empowerment. The corresponding circle shows the birds of soul and spirit nesting in a tree, brooding over the alchemical egg. In the sixth ray, the cipher for the metal mercury or quicksilver and the planet Mercury appears, as well as an identical smaller symbol indicating the principle of Mercury in the three essentials. Distillation is the operation at this stage, which is represented in the sixth circle by a unicorn lying on the ground in front of a rose bush. According to legend, the unicorn runs tirelessly from pursuers but lies meekly on the ground when approached by a virgin. The virgin is the purified matter at this stage, which has returned to a state of innocence and potential. Above the circle is the word occultum, meaning secret or hidden, because the essences at this stage are carried invisibly by the distilling waters. The ray of the moon. The seventh ray contains the symbol that stands for both the metal silver and the moon, the level of manifestation in the Azoth. The seventh and final circle shows an androgynous youth emerging from an open grave, with the Latin word lapidum, or the stone, on the outer ring next to it. This stage of the operation is coagulation, in which the philosopher's child is born. The resurrection of the soul is accomplished by bringing together only the purest essences of one's body, soul, and spirit under the guiding light of meditation. From The Alchemist. There is a hidden message in the Azoth drawing. The Latin words in the outer ring spell out a summary of what has taken place. Visita interiora terra rectificando and vinis occultum lapidum. Visit the innermost parts of the earth, and by setting things right or rectifying, you will find the hidden stone. The first letters of these 7 Latin words spell out the word vitriol, which is a natural form of sulfuric acid. This liquid fire is the fundamental agent of change in most alchemical experiments and also symbolic of the secret fire that drives the spiritual perfection of the alchemist. The least you need to know. Spiritual alchemy focuses on the perfection of the soul. Dragons in spiritual alchemy represent the archetypal powers of the first matter. The true imagination connects with the hidden realities of the universe. The 3 kinds of alchemical meditation are lunar, solar, and stellar. The Azoth of the philosopher's drawing contains a coded formula for the creation of the philosopher's stone. Chapter 20. The Sacred Marriage. In this chapter, the sacred marriage on the personal level, the child of the sacred marriage, alchemy of the Eucharist, the 3 marriages, The psychology of the sacred marriage. In alchemy, a marriage of two different substances is known as a conjunction, which literally means to join with. For instance, we can view the merging of silver and mercury to form silver amalgam, commonly used in dentistry, as a conjunction. The combining or conjoining of substances that takes place during conjunction usually produces a new substance with its own characteristics, and this new substance or compound is called the child of the conjunction. Most often in alchemy, the child of the conjunction is viewed as a hermaphrodite, a gross melding of the characteristics of the original substance. When the conjunction involves the union of living essences or archetypal energies, the event is very powerful and produces a totally new incarnation of energies known as the stone. At this level of the great work, the product of the marriage is known as the philosopher's child. If the essences involved in conjunction are the primal immortal essences of soul and spirit, the event is very special indeed. Known as the sacred marriage, it is the most important event in alchemy. Whether in the laboratory work, the mental work, or the spiritual work of alchemy, the sacred marriage is considered the crucial turning point in the transformation of the matter. The sacred marriage in you. The sacred marriage on the personal level is the marriage of the sun and the moon within, the union of your own spirit with soul to produce a new empowered presence. The alchemist saw this as a passionate coming together of the elements fire and water, an act of inner love that united all the opposing forces within a person. From the Alchemist. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus described the sacred marriage in very alchemical terms. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female one and the same, then you will enter the kingdom of God. The sacred marriage is the creation of a whole new personality from the essences of soul and spirit we have discovered within us, and it takes a lot of courage, passion, and devotion to succeed in uniting them. Conjunction is what we experience when we fall in love with another person, and it is also the communion we feel with all of nature. But when it deals with the essences of soul and spirit within us, it becomes the sacred marriage. The inner marriage. Though they often depicted the sacred marriage as outright sexual intercourse, the alchemists were trying to describe inner experiences. They realized that no matter how fervently one desires to possess the qualities of soul and spirit recognized in another person, romantic love often fails. However, if it is possible to bring together those same essences of soul and spirit that we fall in love with in another person together within ourselves, that which failed to become two in one flesh will succeed in becoming two in one spirit, noted one spiritual alchemist. Earthly lovers, however greatly they may love, wrote another, must be distinct and separate from one another. But you pour yourself so utterly into the soul's essence that no part of you remains outside. Among the most disturbing images of the sacred marriage are those that describe it as an act of incest or masturbation, and some medieval churchmen even accused alchemists of advocating lewd behavior. In the view of Carl Jung, the symbolic incest is the descent into or the penetration of the subconscious. The mother is the subconscious and the son is the conscious. The marriage is a return to the womb of the mother. For most Hermetic writers, such scenes were metaphors for the inner union that took place between the alchemist's own soul and spirit. The primary symbol for the sacred marriage in alchemy is the six-pointed star, in which the two interlocking triangles signify the union of opposites. The triangle pointing upward is the alchemical cipher for fire and symbolizes spirit, God, the sun, and the masculine ego. The triangle pointing downward is the cipher for water and symbolizes soul, the goddess, the moon, and the feminine unconscious. Sometimes the symbol also stands for the child of the sacred marriage or the philosopher's stone. Birth of the Philosopher's Stone. As we have seen, alchemy uses many opposing concepts like fire and water, sun and moon, Mars and Venus, lead and gold, dryness and wetness, warmth and cold, volatile and fixed, matter and spirit. The union of these opposites constitutes a conjunction. Many laboratory experiments confirm the idea that something new was born from the conjunction of some substances. For example, in an ancient experiment known to Alexandrian alchemists, mixing potassium nitrate and sulfuric acid produces a blue-colored solution of aqua fortis, literally strong water or nitric acid, that can be used to separate silver from gold. In the reaction, a solid residue precipitates out of the solution like a child being born from the womb. Potassium nitrate was also known as cubic saltpeter and was often referred to simply as natron, which represented the principle of salt in alchemy. Sulfur was obtained from vitriol, the highly symbolic chemical known as the green dragon. That the mixture of these two archetypal substances would produce a child in precipitation was considered highly significant by early alchemists. In the following figure, we see a depiction of the formation of the precipitate or stone from the marriage of opposites. The two dragons represent the opposing lunar and solar forces of conjunction. Their heads are twisted backward as they seek out the complementary solar or masculine or lunar feminine energy that will complete them. This natural urge to find balance in the embrace of our opposite is what makes the world go round. This act results in the birth or precipitation of the stone, which is shown as the round ball on which the dragons perch. In the same way precipitates form in some chemical reactions, the philosopher's stone is formed during the sacred marriage, which is the union of the divine spirit with the soul and finally with the body. According to some authors, the great work has been accomplished when the divine spirit has been brought down to impregnate the soul with light. This act results in the purification and assimilation of the physical body so that spirit, soul, and body unite to form a new or resurrected body of light. Thos tips. For an example of a diabolical conjunction, read The Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling and pay attention to the alchemy between Harry Potter and Voldemort. After Harry falls into the abyss, he encounters Voldemort, who quickly incarnates into a murderous spirit and forces Harry into a duel. But their duel is really a marriage of opposites. Voldemort's motivation is complex. He wants Harry's blood, not to kill the child, but to take Harry's powerful spirit into himself. On a subconscious level, the dark Voldemort wants to force himself to connect with the solar light through the philosopher's child, Harry Potter. The sacred marriage in Christian alchemy. Christian alchemy began in the Middle Ages in the writings of alchemists, who saw parallels between the work of alchemy and the life of Christ. Christ was viewed as the philosopher's stone and was referred to in many treatises as simply the lapis or stone. Christians viewed the sacred marriage as the union of one's soul with the eternal spirit of Christ. Christ consciousness is born out of that union, and Christ himself, as the philosopher's stone, then becomes the magical touchstone that transforms one's life. In Christian alchemy, every event in the life of Christ is a metaphor for operations in the great work. The virgin birth and nativity of Jesus represent the birth of the philosopher's child, and his subsequent separation, conjunction, fermentation, and sublimation produce the essence of the divine life that is available for all of us. The Holy Sacrament is believed to contain the most profound secrets of spiritual alchemy and is said to offer anyone a way to experience the transformation of the soul. Out of this mystical marriage, Christ as the philosopher's stone is born again within the worshipper. Transubstantiation is the Christian term for the process of alchemical transmutation. Definition. Transubstantiation is the mystical process of becoming the body of Christ in the sacrament of the Eucharist. Worshippers partake of the bread, which is the body and nature of Christ, and of the wine, which is the blood and life force of Christ, and become one with him. The accompanying rituals of the sacrament transform the bread and wine into vehicles of spiritual power. According to Christian alchemy, all three phases of the great work were played out in the last 3 days in the life of Jesus. The black phase of alchemy was Christ's suffering on Calvary. The white phase was his lingering death on the cross, and his resurrection was the perfection of his soul in the red phase of alchemy. In both Gnostic and Christian alchemy, the place where the supreme mystery of the sacred marriage occurs is called the bridal chamber. The Gospel of Philip instructs the initiate that he will receive the heavenly light in the bridal chamber. If anyone does not receive the light while he is here, it warns, he will not be able to receive it in the other place. For when he leaves the world, he has already received the truth. The experience one receives in the bridal chamber has something to do with the resurrection of the soul. For instance, in the Gnostic text, the exegesis of the soul, the feminine soul falls from heaven and is entrapped in the physical world. She returns to heaven by incest with her brother in a mysterious bridal chamber. And when she had intercourse with him, says the text, she got from him the seed that is the life-giving spirit, and this is the resurrection that is from the dead. The 3 marriages in alchemy. Some alchemists claim that 3 conjunctions in alchemy correspond to the 3 magisteriums or accomplishments of the great work. The first marriage in the work of transformation is the lunar marriage or unio mentalis, Latin for union in the mind. This marriage occurs when the soul separates itself from the body or when the alchemist becomes conscious of these two as separate entities. This occurs when the soul and the spirit unite and become separated from the body. It is like a voluntary rejection or death of the body in relation to the united soul and spirit. The second or solar marriage occurs when the united soul and spirit, the unio mentalis, unites with the body, which has now been completely purified by the spiritual or solar energies. The third and final union is the stellar marriage in which the body, soul, spirit unites with the unus mundus, the one world. The unus mundus is the whole universe seen as one thing, which contains all of the potential of the first matter on the first day of creation. The idea is expressed in the alchemical motto, all is one. This is the cosmic marriage or the union of everything we are with everything that is. The body at this level is the salt of the stars, the astral body or the body of light. The sacred marriage in psychology. Carl Jung titled the last book he wrote Mysterium Conjunctionis, Latin for Mystery of the Conjunction. He considered it his most important book, and scholars are still amazed at the depth and intuitive grasp of the principles of alchemy he showed in this work. The book focused on the marriage or archetypal union between the powers of Sol, the sun, and Luna, the moon. Jung used the alchemical term hieros gamos, Latin for sacred marriage, for this event. Jung felt that one alchemical text in particular defined the archetype of the sacred marriage. Called the Rosarium Philosophorum, or Rose Garden of the Philosophers, this manuscript first appeared in the 1550 edition of an anthology called De Alchimia, or The Alchemy. The Rosarium depicts the sacred marriage in a series of 20 woodcuts showing Sol and Luna in various stages of conjunction. As the sacred marriage progresses, the male essence, or Sol, representing spirit or energy, merges completely with the female essence, or Luna, representing soul or matter. As depicted in the Rosarium, this union is achieved through coitus, or the sexual union of Sol and Luna. Their lovemaking symbolizes the mystical union of opposites. The bride represents the soul, or incarnate self, and the bridegroom represents the spirit, or disincarnate self. The product of this sacred marriage, the child of Sol and Luna, is a new archetype known as the divine child or divine androgyny. This is the same archetype as the alchemical hermaphrodite or rebus, the double thing. In Jungian psychology, the inner marriage of the opposites within the psyche, which included masculine and feminine, conscious and subconscious, divine and human forces, gives birth to the self. The self is the archetype of wholeness in a person. According to Jung, the realization of the self archetype is the real goal of the alchemical quest. There is no doubt that Carl Jung's interpretation of alchemical symbols proved very powerful. His discovery of alchemy completely changed his life and inspired a whole new therapy known as depth psychology. In the garden of Jung's home in Bollingen, Switzerland, stands a large cube-shaped monument inscribed by Jung in his own hand with alchemical symbols. This square stone symbolized Jung's work in the world. In his last dream before his death, Jung saw a huge round stone engraved with the words, "And this shall be a sign unto you of wholeness and oneness." For him, it was the philosopher's stone and a sign that he had followed the right path in life. The least you need to know. A conjunction is a union of two substances or forces. The sacred marriage is a conjunction of the essences of soul and spirit. The three marriages in alchemy are lunar, solar, and stellar. In psychology, the child of the sacred marriage is the integrated self. All right, that wraps it up. So we will continue next week with the next part, being part 6. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you do, please like and subscribe or leave a comment. Thanks so much.